So today I spoke with my international student whose name is Francesco, and we met up at a coffee shop in East Lansing. The initial interactions weren't weird or anything, but the language barrier was definitely something that I immediately noticed about the interaction. Um, his English wasn't awful, but a lot of the things that I was trying to say to him, I had to say in a different way, just because he could not completely understand the whole concept of what I was asking him. I could understand what he was saying. There were a few things that I needed to have him repeat, but for the most part, um, that's what immediately not took me by surprise, but I just noticed in the first place. When we started to talk about um, good teaching and what that meant to us, the first thing that he said was that he thought that good teaching didn't always mean you knew the information perfectly. It was that you knew that information very, very well, but also knew how to um, relay that information to other people. Um, and then when he started to talk about good learning, he just stated how knowing the material was one thing, but being able to apply that to something else meant that you were learning the right way and that you were becoming a better learner. I completely agreed with both of those statements. That's what popped into my head when I thought about good teaching and good learning, especially in the first place. So I don't know how much. I think that's just a broad view of teaching and learning throughout all cultures, which was pretty cool to hear. But then when we started to talk more about um, how he grew up and like um, his culture's way of learning, it was pretty interesting for me to hear. One thing that stood out to me as being probably one of the biggest differences in just our curriculum in general was how large of a part art played in his culture. So in Sicily, in Italy, where he's from, art is mandatory up until the end of high school. Um, and I thought that was something that was completely different than it was here, because at least from where I'm from and where I've heard in a lot of places, art you can take art all throughout high school, but you kind of have to specialize in that and pick that. If you don't choose to do art, then you don't have to. I know the only time I was required to do art was in elementary school, and he said it was mandatory throughout his entire schooling career. So that was one thing that interested me the most, and I think that kind of reflects on his culture as well. They really take great pride in art from where he's from, and I thought that was pretty cool. I also asked him kind of just about like his general school day, and they get out of school a lot earlier than we do. So at least from where I'm from, we started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we went to about 3:15, which only gave us about I think like 45 minutes for lunch. And then in his town, at least, um, they started at 8 and then went till 11 to 11:30. At 11 they got a break for lunch, and it lasted till 11:30. And then they would only go until 1 o'clock, sometimes 2. So I thought that also said a lot about their culture, that they did spend as much time in school. And he did say also one thing about universities is that he felt that he had a better relationship with his professors, and they were more less formal here, and were a little bit more helping and caring, and you could just knock on their door and go, and they would help you out. And back from where he's from, they seem to be more formal. You'd have to email them and set up an appointment. So those were some interesting things that I found, and I think they said a lot about our cultures. And I found it very interesting to sit down and talk with him about that. I thought that we did a pretty good job interacting, and other than the language barrier, he was very willing to listen to me, and he loved telling about his culture. So that was my first interaction with him.